if you really look around, nothing in a false fear house is ever telling you the truth. Its sole purpose is to get you to stay. And so when you can walk in knowing the only reason I'm stepping into um, doubt, it as a false fear, there is also a doubt that's really important in your creation field. But as a false fear, which can undermine everything, can make me question myself, can really have me waver in confidence.
My guest today is Jacque Nelson. Jacque, welcome, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
I was saying before we started recording this, I think you're probably the fourth or fifth channel in a row that I've had on the channel, and I haven't been deliberately actually seeking out channels because I've got a lot of different people that come on, and but what is common about all the people that I've spoken to is this connection with the work of Esther and Jerry Hicks and Abraham Hicks, and
Mhm.
that's really, apart from Neil Donald Walsh, that was really where the interest in, I guess, the non-physical world and channeling really started there for me. So I think that's, yeah, Esther and Jerry have got a lot to answer for as far as the the world of channeling goes, haven't they?
I think they woke something up for sure.
Yeah, yeah, they
They're
do.
I believe they talk about being on the leading edge, right? Like, bringing
Yes,
something to the world, and a lot of us woke up through that, so it was very,
yeah,
very yeah.
yeah. Way more people than I realized actually as I'm learning.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
All right. Well, to get things started for today, when did you realize that you were different and that you had abilities or interests that other people didn't seem to have? And what was that experience like for you growing up?
Gosh, growing up, I was a pretty typical kid, a little bit hyperactive and, growing up in a small town in a large family, and so I don't know that I really noticed I was really different other than, um, like, as I grew, I think, like, through high school, people started to come to me and ask me questions or feel like I had some insider information for them, and it would come. So, and then through my life, as I grew from that, that would happen. I still didn't know that was, likely, reflecting back, realizing that I had some wisdom that I don't know where I would have drawn from in my own personal life. Um, but it was when this all really happened was in 2020, March of 2020, actually, that my husband had actually gotten him the opportunity to sit with Robert Dubiel. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He does a lot of work on how to connect with non-physical through body signals. Um, and I just thought it'd be cool. We were exploring different things. We had both become Reiki masters. We were interested in kind of seeking a life that didn't feel like the usual life, because it just felt normal to us to do that. And Robert suggested that he sit down with me and meditate. He said for 5 minutes a day because Donald has been meditating. My husband's been meditating since he was like 10 or something, and
Wow.
I can't sit still long enough to meditate. So
Yeah, me neither.
um, the 5 minutes was probably the key for me to sit down and do it. And at that point, I think we were already Reiki masters. We had spent some time with actually Mackie, who is one of the elders from New Zealand, who had an incredible story. I got to go and sit and talk with him, and he was one of 12 children selected and to be trained. And I probably need to know a lot more about that story that I'm telling here. He has passed since, but incredible man. We had an opportunity to spend some time with. And so then we were sitting, and right away I started just like, getting odd sensations through my body. My face started contorting. My husband's like, "Can't you sit still for 5 minutes?" um, but for me, it was just letting go. And I've had people ask me, like, "Can you teach me how to do what you do?" And I honestly don't know how, other than to say, just let go. Like, allow your innocence to rise, allow yourself to know that you are an infinite being, and see who might want to have a chat with you. And so in about the third, well, it was the third time we sat down, the Marys came all the way in. They sat me up and started talking. And I'm a little stubborn. And so when I kept getting this pulse to set up, and I could feel that it was, something that wasn't me, um, I said, "Hey, if you want to sit me up, then you have to do it. I'm not going to do it for you." And they snapped me up like that, like and surging forward. At that point, my husband, who's trying to meditate next to me, is like, "What is going on?" Um, but it felt so like I had been doing it every day of my life, and like everybody does it every day of their life. Nothing felt odd about it. I was being washed in an absolute love and embrace. And the Marys can get very excited. They're very excitable. They're very humorous. They're deeply loving. They're extremely insightful. And it just felt like sitting with people you had been friends with all your life, except for there were actually no people there, um, having an incredible conversation. And Don just started asking him questions, and they answered everything that he asked. Now, we had been listening to Abraham actually probably about 6 months prior to the Marys coming through. A friend of ours handed us a box full of cassette tapes. And he said, "Here, I think you'll like these." And it was Abraham. And so we even have some of the old videotapes from when they first started out in the small rooms of people. And We started listening to him, and I found that I had to listen to him 3 times to actually let the information they were bringing through digest, to, like, really get it. And, um, and so it was interesting that it was the 3rd time that we sat down to meditate, then the Marys came all the way through, and it registered. And, then when they were leaving, my husband asked, "Will you be back?" And they said, "Anytime you ask." So that's how it all started. I know I jumped from childhood to that, but, childhood was pretty typical for me growing up, other than I was a little maybe different than the regular Joe.
Your husband, Don, given that he started meditating when he was 10,
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
was his reaction when it was you that started channeling rather
Yeah.
than him?
It's a fun question people ask often. He thought it was really kind of rude, probably. He would laugh about it. He's actually glad. Um he he is pretty significant in being introverted. Very, very personable guy, wonderful guy. But not somebody who would put himself in front of others. So it kind of was perfect that the two of us came together and that the Marys came through me. And he was like, "What the heck? I've been meditating, you sit down 3 times and you've got spirit coming through you." But he is so involved in it. Like, he does all the pieces and he asks all the questions and he's infinitely curious. And so it's kind of like being Jerry, I suppose, to Esther.
Yes. Yeah.
That it just stimulates, spirit to have someone to talk to.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
he's
how
fun too. Go ahead.
sorry. How did the moniker, the Mary Group, how did that transpire?
The Mary group? So, when they were leaving that day, Don did say, "What can we call you?" And, um, we thought it was just one. The one that I felt coming through at that point, said, I think my name was Mary. In a lifetime, you can call me Mary." That's where it came from. So, it's not like, the Blessed Virgin Mary or Mary Magdalene, although those energies have come through. And they're amazing. But yeah, and they're a collective. They've talked about that they um, represent right now in the world. I'm trying to remember how they talk about it. They reflect everything about humans and humanity itself, so that they can reach in and assist all of us with remembering that we are union. And
Mm,
and we've been so long steeped in separation. And that's where all the tyranny and difficulty comes from in our world. And so they're really here to help us remember who and what we actually are,
mm.
as union, as humans.
I'm a big fan of the Ra materials, so the Book of Ra, and how
Mm.
that's a social collective that had an ancestry with off world, and Venus billions of years ago.
Mhm.
Do they identify with a particular ancestry, or is it really sort of the energy that's right here with humanity?
It's, they don't identify with any particular ancestry. They just it's
Mm,
like they came together in this timing in our world because it's a synergy that's needed. Truly, it's interesting. One day somebody was, I think actually it's on our website, asking, why they're here, and they said for relief, because we need relief.
mm,
And so that we can open and remember. And they agreed to come.
mm.
And I guess I agreed to host them. So,
So you said that they came because we need relief. Is that really,
mhm.
is that kind of the core purpose of, or their sort of core message that they've got, or how do they deliver that as a message generally?
Yeah, I would say that all of their different teachings actually do help us to find relief, and like, not relief from, but relief into our actuality and who we
Mm,
are and what's possible. Their core message is, though, a couple of things, I suppose. One is, that we've been living in years and years of separation. Um, and that our natural state of being is union. And like, they'll refer that nature never, while nature is impacted by acts and separation, it's always remained union. And that as humans, and they're actually saying that there's a shifting time right now where we are closer to remembering who and what we actually are, and that's why it's getting so noisy and conflictual, is because it's change. The other message that I would say that they speak about quite a bit, and I believe it's part of what brings us relief when we live it, is the difference between fearful loving and love that is of loving, which is source energy loving. And that most all of us are taught to fearfully love, um, because it's about staying safe. It's about wanting to feel safe with people we care for. We fearfully love ourselves. We fearfully love other people, and it kind of condenses us or makes us shrink to fit something lesser than what we actually are.
mm,
Um, and when we can open into, like, you just like breathe in and just feel the vibration of love that is of loving, that is so pure and unafraid, and how it actually feels like it shifts my physical being, which they often remind us that our bodies are made from the same stuff our souls are made from. um, and we can take that breath, and move with what they call a saturating pause, and our wisdom can rise. We just don't have to be afraid of ourselves or each other. We can actually lean in, um, to what they refer to as the vibration of union, and remember the possibility of who we are individually and together. So it's pretty amazing to
mm.
consider life from a different place. If I stop being afraid, then what is possible? And even if I don't know I'm afraid, if I ask myself, wow, what's making me hold my breath, or what's making me hesitate? And sometimes hesitation, the Marys are coming in. Sometimes hesitation comes from, yeah, it's important. You need to pause, right? You need to hesitate. But if it's fear based, then you can take another breath and make a choice that's actually advantageous for us individually and for how we care for the world.
You were saying they're kind
Yeah,
of
they're
like
coming in. I can
tapping on the
already hear
shoulder, aren't they?
it in my
Yeah.
languaging. So,
I've got other questions. We could ask
yeah.
them if it feels appropriate. Then how do you feel about bringing in the Mary
That's
group? Because
alright.
I've got
They're
a
just
bunch
hanging
of other
out. They
things.
know they were invited, so they show up. So, I'm happy to answer more questions. They said they're good.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I've got a couple of those, and I suppose when I look at them, it's kind of like sometimes I have questions for me personally, but really they're not just for me personally. They're for everybody. So anything is for you is for everybody anyway. Um,
Mhm,
now I wanted to ask you about, because you're working pretty close partnership with your husband Don in
mhm.
bringing through the messages, like you were Jerry to his Esther. So how important has that support, his love and support, been in giving you the courage to put yourself out there as a channel?
Oh, all of completely, because, I truly, he's the one who said, "Hey, we've gotta lean in and learn more about this. We've gotta, find out what it is and what's possible and what it can bring." He's got kind of this wider scope of, idea and dreaming and just way of being with life. And so he really encouraged me to have them come again and to we started having a couple of close friends come over and ask questions. And the beginning was so awkward because after the very first time they came in, then of course, Jackie, me, I started like I got in the way, and it would take them a while to kind of get through. And so we had these few beautiful friends who would just sit and wait for me to get out of the way, and Marys would go through this process of helping me to move on so that they could come through. And so Don was just and remains just so supportive and encouraging that kind of, like your wife said to you, that's perfect for you. He's like, this is really perfect. This is what we've been asking for. And what can I do to support you being able to, sit down and let yourself have this and share it with the world. And so with his support and a close circle of friends that were also very encouraging, I started, releasing and embracing the idea of like because your whole life changes. I was a human resource director and you start channeling spirit and the way you look at everything changes and the way you have conversation changes and the way people look at you when they ask you what you do changes.
Yeah.
um, and you just embrace it day by day and lean in, and he's been a great support in all of that. Barry's
Mm.
calling the man behind the curtain because he kind of is the encourager and takes care of everything.
You mentioned resistance, and
Hmm.
as someone myself who has an intense fascination with channeling, it is not a very good meditator, but nonetheless, the idea of being able to channel is still absolutely fascinating to me. But it seems
Hmm.
like there's an inherent. You mentioned you had this sort of resistance initially that was getting in the way. So
Hmm.
I feel like that's probably common for a lot of people, myself included. So what advice would you offer to help people that might be resistant because of being fearful?
Hmm.
Yes, I think it's a lot of it's to do with fear of looking silly, fear of feeling silly, fear of what people
Yeah,
might say or think. Yeah, what could you offer
yeah.
for that?
Or even fear of not being able to get through to it, right? Like, so there's all
Yes.
kinds of things we
Mm.
tell ourselves. So, for me, I just, the biggest thing is I know that when I choose my innocence, which by the way isn't the same thing as being like susceptible. It's just really opening into why wouldn't we know that there's no separation between physical and non-physical? Why is it even you know, a bizarre thought or an unusual thought that we can, of course, bring information through or channel. We all do it. The Marys talk about it all the time. We all do it in some way, whether it's, the way that it comes through me or through writing or through painting or through really becoming present with somebody and holding space for them. We're moving with vibrations. The Marys talk about how everything is vibration first. So if somebody's interested, one, it really is. It's an unusual life. I mean, I had to let my family know what I was doing at some point. I had to share with friends. And the most interesting thing I would say is I felt so awkward. And I was, when it started, what, 20 years, 25 years out of high school already? What will my high school friends think? People I don't even see anymore for the most part. But that's that limitation. That's that fear-based thing that comes in. And it's like, why would that matter? Why would I exchange or stop having this incredible experience because somebody might judge me? And so you kind of get over yourself. And then you say, I'm gonna lean in. And their Marys are if you're gonna lean in, right? Like just let yourself have it. um, feel what it feels like for they will often when the Marys talk with people who want to know how to start tapping in, they do often tell you to go sit in nature, go be with where union is and has never forgotten itself. go start to feel how it feels to be there and how it feels to be you there, and how you can start sensing and opening up all of your senses, beyond the physical aspect of them and into the communication aspect of them. Um, there's so many ways. It's just kind of like, even if I just let myself get a peek, or I say, okay, I'm available. It's also not telling yourself or the universe what to do. It's an invitation. And when you can get into the vibration of an invitation, then you can start to feel it wake up inside of you. So, and then it's like, well, how does that move for me? What's my way of being with it? I did feel in the beginning like I didn't ask for this. This came as quite a surprise. I wasn't trying to evoke channeling, you know? And yet, like I shared, once it came through, it was like, of course, it was the most natural thing in the world, even though my body was contorting and, messages were coming through me, and they were moving. I was feeling the sensation of a being. It's all love. And it's just incredible to be a part of it. So, leaning into your yes, and then being curious and finding out how it shows up for you. And the Marys do also say, ask questions, because spirit likes to answer questions. So just the other day, they were saying to someone, get up in the morning and write down a question that you have that you're curious about. And then don't wait for an answer or demand that an answer come. Just say, okay, my question is out there. It's going to be so fun to find out how the answer comes, because it always does. And then you can just
Mm.
start noticing, and you'll feel that sensation. I feel the Marys come in, like between, my neck and behind my heart. They call it the door behind your heart. Um, and I just feel them, come in. And in the beginning, it was like, my body had to get used to their vibration, and it's been 24 years now, so it's a pretty smooth transition these days.
The question piece there, I think that's really important. I had another conversation a couple of days ago where I'd somehow managed to rack my back just by leaning over to do something with a pot plant. I've never hurt my back like that
Yeah.
before. This very painful, and I started to ask, like, why did I do that for? Like, what was
Mhm,
I thinking that I would cause that to occur? And
mhm.
I kind of raised that. Well, it wasn't really a question. It was more like a why did I do
Curious.
that?
Mhm,
But really
mhm.
it wasn't a very useful question. I don't know exactly know where I'm going with this, but anyway, I'll keep going. But what was more useful was to, like, sort of be aware. Just being aware of what I was doing at the time would have been a more useful thing to say. How did I actually cause that to occur? And what
Mhm.
is it, because I like twisted as I leaned over or something like that? It's a more useful question rather than, yeah, I still don't know where I'm going to go with this. But
Like,
there was
why
something
did I
about,
do that? Right? You
yeah,
shift it seems to me like they shift it from kinda like beating yourself up a little bit about it, like
yes,
judging
that's what
yourself
it
for it.
is.
And
Yeah.
then just instead, just being curious, like, wow, it's so interesting that that happened. Mary's talk about curiosity. Without it, nothing would exist, right? And that there's got to be this satiating curiosity. We actually just did a 6-week series on the alchemy, of turning curiosity into gold, for how you can actually utilize it in your life. And again, it's not, I need an answer. It's just living in the vibration of curiosity helps you notice and become aware. And then if you're not judging yourself, because we can judge ourselves a lot, question ourselves a lot, but if we
Mm,
actually ask ourselves questions and we keep a curiosity open, it feels different, because then you can open up like, oh, you know what? I did kind of get a signal, like maybe I should do that another way, or it would be more helpful if, we always get these nudges that we ignore. And then if we stop judging ourselves or condemning ourselves or beating ourselves up, which is never our actual voice, this is the Mary's teachings,
mm,
it's and we get just really curious, then we can think it's, even if we tweaked our back or did something like that, like, oh, like there was something I can gain from this. And that's what I'm going to focus on. So the Marys always talk about, it's never about the detail, it's about your response to it. Donald got run over by a dog on his bicycle a few years, a couple, well, in 2020. He was riding his bike. He's a big bicyclist down a hill, and a dog, he usually knows his route, not a usual dog, came barreling out of the ditch, hit the back end of his front wheel, and so his bike, went flying,
Mm.
broke all his ribs, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And yeah, he was like, "What the heck?" I was joyful, I was happy, I was positive, because I think we can get some messages that go around like, "Well, you caused it," or what, that sort of thing. It's like, if instead you look at, okay, what's my response to it? Well, his response to it, through a lot that he had to deal with, was that he is going to come all the way back. It was really important to him to care for his body, to rebuild his body, to have his recovery be his choice, to really get strong in himself as a creator around it. And all of those things are very helpful for other arenas of your life. It doesn't mean you need to have something like that happen, but if we go into a graveness or a fear about why things happen or what's going on, we can get really stuck and we can shrink into a lesser idea. And if we instead get really curious, and it's not always easy because sometimes we're suffering, and we want to suffer because it hurts. But if you can let yourself take a breath and start to look at, how can I gain from this? Or what can I build from here? Or what's my lean forward? And the things that you can gather and create and cause that lend themselves to other parts of your life start to get revealed. So,
Mm.
we don't always know this. And the Marys they do say, sometimes stuff just happens that you have to deal with. And then it's just about what's your response and how are you going to deal with it. And if you do it from a suffering place or like they say, have to with burden, it's going to be arduous. But if you let your energy get into that lift, like, what is our actual natural way of being, then you can move through it and gain lots of other things along the way. So it's stop condemning, ourselves when we look at something we did or didn't do that led to something that we'd maybe rather not have experienced, but
Mm.
instead get really curious, and then so much opens up.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because thinking back, this happened like almost a couple of weeks ago. I was getting in the car to go. I do uh, boxing with a VR headset at my friend's house, and I was getting in the car to go there a few times a week, and I really didn't need to because we trained other times. Like it's a friendship that's it's important to me, but I would go there solo. But after I injured my back, I thought I can't. It wasn't. I couldn't just get in the car. Like it was a real ordeal. So I arranged for that to occur at my house instead. So now I have like a 30-minute commute that I no longer do, and it just works a whole lot better for me. So I guess
Yeah,
that's something. There you go. That's something that good that came out of it,
yeah,
which I would
and
not have
let
done.
it just
I was refusing to do anything about that. I thought it was just fine the way it was, but it really wasn't.
Mhm, right, and then it goes, "Okay, if you're not gonna listen, then here, we'll help you listen like this."
Yeah, yeah,
Give you a little nudge.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So, well, I've got a few other questions for the Mary group. I really
Okay.
appreciate you sharing your
Look,
personal journey with us. If that
mhm,
feels fine, could we bring them in and
absolutely.
see what
That
they say?
since they're already coming through anyway.
Okay. And just for people who are new to what channeling is, could you explain a little bit about the process for you and what that feels like as they come
Mm,
through?
sure. It's so interesting when you do something regularly. It's interesting to kind of look at the pieces of it. But what I do is I have an agreement that I'll release, and so I Mary's always say, when you close, they always say, when you close the eyelids across your eyes, your vision goes inward. And so I close my eyes. I just kind of let myself release. My vision goes inward, and I actually find myself kind of in the non-physical world. So I see a lot of imagery. People ask me where I go, and I kind of grin and say, I think I go where I'll be when I'm dead, because it's just this beautiful, open, blissful um, energy. I do hang around sometimes. So I'll have recall of what they talk about right afterwards, but I don't hold on to it. I don't hold on to it like it's my own experience or memories. So sometimes people will have to remind me of an experience they had with Mary's. And Mary's always remember. So those are some fun stories. They met with a gentleman, and years later he came to see him again, and they reminded him of something he talked about to them years ago, and he was like, "You remember that?" They're like, "Well, you let us in." So, um, so the experience though is I just go in and I agree to release. And the in the very beginning I did make an agreement with the Marys that they will hold me very well and they will care for me while they come through and utilize me as a vessel for their communication. And I just completely trust that. And they've always done it. So um, I just let go. They come in and they'll greet you. So when like somebody, if they want to have a private conversation with them, I always say it's a conversation. So they'll probably ask you what you want to talk about. And it just goes from there. And sometimes they ask you more questions because what the Marys do is they come into your field and they start looking around at the imageries and the different energies. And sometimes you're asking about one thing and they're noticing where you get tight and where you get open and what is happening with your vibrational field. And sometimes they'll talk to you exactly about what you're asking about because that's important to you. And sometimes they'll say, well, we know you're doing that just to get in. So, but let's go to where you really want to go. And they'll
Right.
talk about it. It's so individual and they're so loving and they're so very honoring of each person they come into connection with. So the way that I do it is I just really agree to I'm happy to go. I don't want to be in the mix. And they help me do it. So that's how it works.
Okay. I'm looking forward to
That's
it.
helpful. Okay. All right. See you later. I'm going to take these off. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome, 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 welcome,
Hello.
welcome. Listen to you. You have a good rumble. Just a moment. We want to sniff you up a bit, yes? Hmm.
You're way cheekier than I thought you'd be.
Ah. Hmm. What would you like to explore together? We are so excited to be here. We can feel in you the layers of existence and your infinite curiosity, which always gets us excited. Yes,
Okay.
beautiful,
Well,
beautiful,
I'll
wonderful,
ask the question
wonderful.
that I've
Okay,
only just added that I'm always curious about. What
okay.
happens when we die? Well, what happens
Ah,
when our body dies?
when okay. So what we would offer is that with great immediacy are the whole of yourself. And you're the known whole of yourself in non-physical, which is light and source and creation, and you're of the oneness. And you have that realization instantaneously. Uh, the experience that you may have or that others may have of you is really determined by choice. And so, just as you have countless choices to make in your physical incarnation, you are still a chooser in your non physical. So, how you move, what you do, what you are, um, is through your will. Yes, and so it is what happens is very personal and individual. And when you ask about someone who has passed, what we look to is to call the vibration of those memory cells of who that being was to you and call them forward. And so sometimes being that has left, you can feel some familiarity of, and sometimes it seems like a much wider vibration. We often have fun talking with people about that when a person dies, as you offer, um, your relationship continues if you choose it, and sometimes gets even more expansive. There is no actual distance or division between what you refer to as the living and the non-living, and so it's all it all moves together. However, when you die, you remember who you are in your wholeness. And you are very connected to the life and the lives you have lived, if you choose to be. And we do offer that humans often who leave with something unfinished, or they left in a manner that was startling. We call sometimes a bit of the vibration of their personality will hang around in what we call the spinning garden. And we call it that because it's like pinwheels. It's an energy that moves and decides when it's ready to release. And yet you are pure positive energy. Um, there is no ache in non-physical. Yes? Does that answer your question?
It does. I'm always curious about everyone's perspective on that.
Mhm.
I'm going to end up
There's
asking
no
questions
one answer.
that I didn't have written down.
Mm.
So I've noticed that in my life, whenever I listen to what other people think I should do, it really works out well. And then when I follow this, my sort of curiosity and go down that path, even though people think that's just crazy, it does work out better. So for those who are kind of stuck, in this, I've got to the point now where I really do listen to what other people think I should do. But I know that I was stuck there, and I know a lot of people are. Why is it useful and beneficial to us in our existence here to really just stick with what we're curious about and not worry too much about what other people think about what we should do?
Well, it is, it's fun. We're having a bit of fun because you're utilizing the word should. And it is one of the things we love to say is, stop shoulding on each other. Yes. Should usually comes from fear and sometimes can cause a good path, as you've said, is when people give me good informed advice or suggestion or what I should do. Uh, the reason that those work out is that there's an agreement within you for it. If you do it only because somebody told you should do it, you could do it and find some success, but wouldn't find success in your happiness. And so when you follow what's curious in you, what is moving and passionate in you, we talk about that being in your lift energy field because it's your have to, not your have to. So, like when we heard Jackie ask you the question of what, earlier on when you first came together, what compelled you or made you, want to, do this podcast or have opportunity to, bring people into the world to be seen and heard, that are doing differing things. What we heard in your answer was, I just had to. It was like something that, as you said, you didn't make a plan, you didn't plot it out, you weren't trying to figure anything out. You followed you followed a vision, you followed a yes, you followed a sense or a feeling, you followed a curiosity, and it took off. And so those things are matched to what we call your spirit. And so when you hear people talk about your mind, your body, your heart, your soul, and your spirit, our recognition of the spirit of a being, of a human, is the way of you. It's actually the signature of your essence. It's who you are in the freest, most truest place of self. Life often, people will shrink to fit a more limited idea or, to survive or, because this is just what's available to me or what I know I can do. And yet if you live spirit forward, if you at least let your spirit have a voice and time with you, your spirit is actually unafraid. And if we might segue into a little bit of something else from there, we'd like to. It's unafraid and it's always tugging and pulling on you. And if you really let yourself go with it, and of course it's going to partner with your heart, which is your wisdom center, your minds we refer to as your thinking processing mind, the great library, yes, and your being mind, which is your connectivity between the non-physical and physical, that moves with you, with each one of you very intimately and specifically, and your soul, of course. And we often refer to your relationship with your soul because your soul is always pure, positive, beautiful, light, golden fluid, movement. your relationship with your soul can get, wonky or really depthfully registered, and it can move about, a lot in the course of even a day. And yet it's to open and recognize there's a way of me, and I have to live that. So whether I let that come out in these things that I'm doing that kind of conform to the world, at least I still get to feel a sense of myself and what my answer is in the world and the ad that I am, instead of, I'm just getting through this so that I can, survive this life thing. It's your spirit is excited, it's exuberant, it believes in you completely, it knows exactly how to connect dots, and it also is the possessor of your true timing. So in your world, you're often told how to time things out. And when you take a breath and you lean in and you ask yourself, what's my timing? It's fun. Your saliva glands might activate. Um, it's so succulent to realize I'm a real being and a real person expressing in this world, and that gets to be a part of, and a significant part of how I move in the world. It doesn't mean that you need to be separate or do it differently or not fit in. Some people, prefer that, and yet it's it's nothing about me without me, and I get to feel who I am in the midst of those things. The segue we wanted to move to a little bit is when we talk about your spirit being fearless, because it really is. That's why it's good to connect with other parts. It's not that you're driven by fear, but it can ground in the wisdom of your heart and the knowing of your belly and the great library, the reference of everything you've experienced, whether you are conscious of it or not, of your mind, and then your relationship with the continuousness of self through your soul. It's really good. We call that the arc of union. When you bring those things together, you get to have a succulent life. Instead of, often we see humans kind of, your mind and your heart might not understand each other. And so we really move with people to have them come to the round table and actually be a team, be your great team. But the segue is self-preservation. We started really looking at that because some people say, well, self-preservation, I have to do things the way the world does it, or I need to do it in this way,
Hmm.
or the way that I was told to do it, or encouraged to do it because I don't know enough myself. You actually always do. If it's about you, you know the most about it out of everybody. And it's good to partner with others that can help you open your perspective, insight, and awareness to really gain your optimal sense of being and make your choices in ways that really feel good to you. And yet, your self-preservation, we notice in your world, is called a fear. Self-preservation fear. And we've even spoken about that, false fear, which we could go into a long story about, which a lot of people are very familiar with. There's a whole neighborhood of false fear homes. Yes, doubt, trepidation, shame, all of those things. And you run to them for safety, but they're not safe. And so much to talk about. We could be here for days. And yet, self-preservation is not fear. It's a partner that you came in with. And its voice it combines with your voice. It's part of your sound, not your noise, your sound. And it's an insistence that you value your value. That's what self-preservation is. And that's whether you value your physical well-being. So your self-preservation will say, don't walk in front of a moving vehicle, to value your physical body. It also will insist that you value your happiness and your emotional well-being and your sense of self. And so self-preservation is an extraordinary partner for you to live your existence with. And it's fun because you can, if you tap into the vibration, you can feel it. And it isn't that it's only in one space, but you may feel it in one space more than another. And if you choose to say, you know what, I'm gonna take my self-preservation with me because it's insisting that I value my value. And when you value your value, you also start to have a natural invitation, an encouragement for others to value their value. And it changes the course of conversations, even if you have differing points of view. You stop being afraid of yourself because you're valuing your value. You're caring for another, not taking care of them. And you're valuing them, valuing theirs. And you can have differences that sometimes can cause and birth a whole new arena of possibility. That's why some people will, when they say to us, well, is this true or is this true? And you may be heard to say, we ask, what's the third option? Because the third option opens the field into all possibility where there's no limitation on what you could actually reach for. And so we know we're going on a little tangent here. And yet it is so important for humans to remember the value that they are and that you are actually equal value. Your world with separation has a lot of privilege distribution and really division of value and measurement. There's no measurement in the universe. The universe does not measure. It does not say something is better than another thing. It doesn't even actually say if something is right or wrong. Right and wrong is a knowing, it's a sensation that you have in you. And if you attach it to false fear or shame or guilt or those sorts of things, it's got a heavy burden and it's hard to get through to yourself through those things. If you choose to instead, as Jackie mentioned, close those eyelids and go to your center and value your value and ask yourself questions from there, you will so with growing and growing immediacy know what is for you and what is not for you, what's a match and what's not a match, and to begin to carve how you have your relationship in your internal community with yourself and all of those bits and pieces of you and with all of existence and with your communities in your physical world. When you live from the inside out in that way, there's just so much more breath and so much more possible and so much less fear. Did we answer your question?
You did, and I'm going to segue a little bit as well. So
Okay,
the
beautiful.
idea of false fear
Mhm,
seems to me that's the root of so many problems that we have in the world today. Could you
mhm,
expand on that a little more for us from that perspective?
mhm. Absolutely. So it's rampant and truly, we've spoken with it. Sometimes false fear also can trigger fearful loving. Yes. And with the best intention, you can fearfully love somebody. And yet you're really asking them, you're shooting them, and you're asking them to remain a bit smaller or to do something in a certain way so that you can feel safe about them. Yes. And that's coming because you're in a false fear. And instead of a breathful space and that love that is of loving and an awareness of the value and the wonder and the answer and the anat that every being is. And so false fear kind of if we bring it in more of a microcosm or personal, we walk people through false fear neighborhoods. We take them through those houses where they've lived for so long and maybe doubt or resistance or shame or shame was not an original part of you, by the way. That's created by humans. um, where I can be safe here because this is an energy that I see in my world, and then if I can understand myself through it, then I can know how to survive in it. And yet if you really look around, nothing in a false fear house is ever telling you the truth. Its sole purpose is to get you to stay. And so when you can walk in knowing the only reason I'm stepping into doubt, it as a false fear, there is also a doubt that's really important in your creation field. But as a false fear, which can undermine everything, can make me question myself, can really have me waver in confidence. It can have me deem myself or judge myself or only know myself through that which is going on around me. And so if you walk into that house knowing the only reason I'm coming in here today is to take myself out of everywhere I am in this house, to breathe myself into who I am because I'm here to bring me to my true home, and this isn't it. And to know that no matter what that house does, because it might make you think you can't get out, I can always leave. And I'm walking out that door. I'm not slamming it shut. I'm closing it gently. I'm knowing that doubt doesn't have anything for me when it's undermining, no matter who the message for me to doubt myself came from, myself or anybody else, or perhaps a combination. I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to know this house is not my home. And I'm going to put the palm of my own hand, my creation. I hold my life in my hands. And I'm going to put the palm of my hand on my heart and on this door. And I'm going to let myself know this house is not my home. I don't live here. It doesn't really have anything that nourishes me. And it doesn't own me, and I don't belong to it. So clear. And then we talk about, and then you can walk down the porch and up the sidewalk, and you might get some cat calls from other houses. Oh, come on over here, hang out with me. You're good. You don't want to leave. Keep walking out. You don't need to burn the house down or torch the neighborhood. The beautiful thing is when you start to understand that it's a false sphere, it's not real. It feels real. We absolutely recognize that. And we actually have you say, I want to be honest and honor the part of me that is drenched in this doubt that I don't know how to move from. Good. Be really good about holding yourself in everything you've experienced through that. And then choose to say, and I choose to know myself without it, to be free of the way it drowns me or swallows me or doesn't set me forward. And then you can, walk yourself out of the neighborhood into what we call the truth neighborhood or true neighborhood. And you might need to get used to living there where you can actually breathe and where you can walk into houses like possibility and wonder and imagination and feel safe. Feel not safe because you need to have fear, safe because you recognize yourself there and you recognize the true state of your own spirit and being and soul and your belonging. And you can start to feel yourself in a differing way. And it takes some getting used to. And yet, to know the truth of that. And there's no gates or fences on the false fear neighborhood because you can know it's there and that by choice you choose not to live there. And you might say, Mary, I woke, I was good, I was great. And then I woke up this morning and I was smack dab in the kitchen of doubt. And boy, was the food in there bad. Yes. And yet it is like, good. Well, at least now you know, and you can leave. And so it might take a few times of really getting that to sink in. That false fear is false and it's never going to tell you the truth. And that's where, and then it is, and if self-preservation isn't fear because it's unafraid, what I can breathe in instead is I have value that I can't live in this neighborhood. And we had one gentleman we were walking through who said, I don't want to leave the false fear neighborhood. I'll be all alone. Everybody I know lives here. And we say, and if you still choose to walk away, you'll start to see the world a different way. You'll start to learn about spaces and people that aren't that, and you'll open a whole new world to yourself. And he truly has. And it's not like, oh, that's going to happen in 5 minutes. But when you open, I have a yes for this. And I truly want to let myself have this life with all of the details and bits and pieces that have been wonderful and tragic in it, and breathe my own breath and realize there's something for me to know because I want it. And so the house of ache in the false fear neighborhood is painful. There can be a sweet, wonderful, beautiful ache of creation. That ache is I am waking up in the beauty of knowing that I'm reaching for something more than I've known of myself and of this world before for me. And we know that sounds selfish, and yet really for you. And because when you really do it for you, you have so much extra to share everywhere you go and no longer a need to make sure someone else gets it. It's an invitation, and you can have a belief in them and hold that belief in them, hold space for it until they know how to pick it up for themselves and join you, or maybe not. Maybe they go on their own path because you're each free. Yes. And so relieving the false fear that keeps you dim or not fully breathing, and letting yourself know there's really nothing here to feed me. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to let myself see it. I'm not avoiding it. I'm not afraid of it. I'm not ignoring it. Because if you ignore something, it's going to get louder and it's going to show up more and more in your psyche and more in your thoughts. And so we always say, pour a cup of tea, sit down with doubt, sit down with treachery, sit down with imbalance, whatever it is, and say, hey, listen, I can sit with you and I can know all the parts of me that have moved with you in it. And I know you are not where I live and or where I need to live or where I choose to live. And so I'm letting you know I'm moving out because you don't have to be afraid of it knowing. And it might try to convince you. Just remember, it's never telling you the truth. It's just being really good at what it's there to do, which is to be false. And so you can say, wow, you're good. And I'm still going. Yes?
Mm. I have
Helpful?
very helpful. I have one final question, which is the most common question that I get on my YouTube videos. We live such a privileged life here in Australia and in a lot of other parts of the world as well. But there are people who are really in pain, are hurting, their children are, and they wonder if the universe or God or source is such a all-loving thing, then
Yeah.
why does it allow these things to occur to us?
And so, and we get that question also. Yes.
Mm.
And so that's why we're here is for one, there are those who, it's if you step into suffering, it gets really hard to move yourself when you're in the midst of it. And so it's to open and stand with it, um, and to care for it and to help it to move. What we will offer is why would God forsake me, or why would an all loving being allow all this pain to be here? What we can tell you, because we've had people ask us, can you just change this in my life? We can partner with you. We can meet you wherever you are. We can keep reminding you and assist you with knowing how to connect dots, or how to engage with something that helps you to remember that you can move from where you are, and that you can call to yourself what you need to do that. We say we can be the GPS system and you're the driver, and we know we can hear people saying, Mary, I've tried everything and I don't know how to, my circumstance is so difficult and so challenged. So the first thing really is, we would move with them, and once you know us, we kind of hang out with you unless you tell us to, bugger off. Yes. And so it is to remember that you're not a situation, you're a self. And sometimes that can feel desperately difficult. And yet, if you take a breath and you say, I'm going to do it anyway, right here in the midst of the circumstances I'm in, I'm going to remember that I'm a self and I'm a whole being, and that I have equal value to every other brilliant life, and every life is brilliant. And I don't know how I'm going to get to where I want to be, or to even feel just a little bit better or more hopeful than I do right now. And I'm still saying yes. And I'm saying it from what I can find to resource from myself. And then one of the tools we offer, and we know it might sound frivolous, but it's something, if I agree to do it, if I'm gonna use the energy anyway, I may as well use it for this. Yes. And so what can I spend myself on in this moment, in this breath, in this day, in this experience? What can I actually, because I want to show up and spend myself on something that lets me know that I'm real and that I have value and that I matter. The difference is, when you spend yourself on something, you will feel tired, and tired will become a triumph. It feels good to feel really tired. And it might take a while to get there, and yet today I'm going to do it again. And I'm not, and I could choose to trade it off for being afraid, and I might do that. And I might not. I might choose to let myself breathe and just notice something I can spend myself on. Like maybe just noticing that I like the temperature in the air, or that the third hair on my pinky toe doesn't hurt. Whatever it is, I'm going to spend myself on being with that. You start to come alive. What happens with most humans is you're trying to move with what's spending you. and then you're exhausted. And when you rest, when you're tired, you will rest and renew. When you rest when you're exhausted, you'll rest, but you won't renew. So we know that right now in your world there are all sorts of inhumane things that are occurring in many, many ways. And if you're in the midst of inhumanity, and it's not about measuring, they have something more that's inhumane going on than I do. It's it's all of that inhumanity when you agree to just let your focus be there, it just it keeps it with seeds. If you take a breath and you say, I'm gonna just notice something that feels better, no matter, and it isn't if what I'm experiencing is more difficult or less difficult. I'm choosing to let one particle of my light shine inside of me for me. And then I'm going to notice what I want to spend that on, whether it's within me or in the world around me. And I'm going to remember that I'm a self, so I can do that. If I'm the energy of this situation, I can't get anywhere. If I can remember I'm a self, and even though I feel like nobody's paying attention, I am. And I'm a divine voice and a divine existence. And if I start letting myself notice that I have value and that I get to be seen, then something else, I'm going to let myself have a yes for something else that can notice that and join me, and that I can notice what's already been there and join it also. So it's a process, it's a movement. And sometimes people just take a breath and say, holy cow, I was under hypnotism. I can move, or I can start to really see, I can feel myself. I'm so grateful right away. And sometimes it's like, yep, today I'm going to say yes again. And tomorrow I'm going to say yes again. And the yes needs to actually be true. We often offer to people that the vibration of ing, like when you hear singing bowls, ing, yes, or when you ing in yourself, it's a waking. It's notifying everything that can hear you, and much more hears than you think that can hear you, into activation. You're signaling an activation. So I'm putting an ing on what I do want. If I'm in what I don't want, then anytime you're in the vibration of don't want, threat is going to be open. And we know there's real threat. And sometimes you're like, I don't want to be, I am under the duration of threat. And yes, it's the truth. And I get to state that that's the truth. And it's not the only thing that's existing in me. So I'm going to honor and be honest about how I'm in a duration of threat, and yet I'm still going to let there be a breath of this signature of my essence, of the light that I am. I'm going to notice something. Maybe it's a piece of lint moving through a ray of sun. Maybe it's a sound. Maybe it's a memory cell, something that I can spend myself on that I do want. And it will start to distract you from the don't want. And the don't want that has that threat hammering on you in every moment will start to quiet, because your sound will be more focused, or more in alignment with, or more giving yourself permission to know that I can be in a state of, duress, and also feel love at the same time. And they can stand right next to each other. And actually, my duress can start to feed itself and nourish itself from the love that I have that's standing next to it. And the love that I have isn't going to draw on the energy of the duress, but it can look to see what is the tenacity that's feeding the duress. And I'm going to pull on that so I can help nourish the duress into transformation. You as humans are so much more than you recognize. And sometimes you recognize it in moments. It's giving yourself an extra pause, an extra breath to say, there's an and that isn't about this and this and this. That's a pile. It's an and that stimulates and stirs momentum in a direction that brings something that's possible into myself and in my experience with me, that I can feel a light in, and that it can start opening because I can spend myself on that. Is that helpful?
That's great. I'm going to lean into one question for me. Actually, well, I don't know what the question is that I should ask, but it
Okay.
is there any wisdom that you could offer me that would be useful for me at this point in time?
For you. This is what every time someone asks them about them personally, we look inside of you. That's where all your answers are. Yes.
Hmm.
And and this might sound interesting to you. What came back right away is let her rip. Yes. So what we would see is dive in, do it, let yourself feel the succulence, enjoy it, be curious, saturate, find out more anytime that you can, and just give yourself that freedom. Let her rip. If you feel yourself holding back, ask yourself, is this an important hesitation? Because hesitation can be a very good aspect. It can say, hey, you know what, that's something you need to actually give some thought to. But if it's a hesitation that's just like it's coming with fear, take another breath and ask yourself, is it true? Is what I'm hesitating about and what I'm telling myself, is it true? And so often you find it's really not true. And it's usually not your voice. It's maybe a voice that came from somewhere else. Someone who gave you the message of limitation, sometimes for the best of intention of fearful loving. And yet really you're like, let her rip, lean in, let yourself have life, be life, and breathe your own breath and find out all you can while you have an opportunity.
Mm.
Yes?
I'm glad you reminded me the answers are always within.
Right, right
Uh,
there. Yes.
Mary, I really
They
appreciate
say
your.
there's no big bag of answers in the sky. It's right there inside of you, and you are your best resource. And yes, sometimes it's delightful and extraordinary to have someone who can assist you with seeing you or shining a different perspective or asking a differing question. And always ask yourself the question and then find out what your answer is. People move to fill in the blank, like, oh, I better have the right answer. And one of the things we love to remind people of is look for an answer. Recognize that you are an answer in every moment, actually. Let yourself go, let go of the tyranny of needing to be the answer. And if someone tells you they are the answer, we would say, you might want to, ask yourself if that's true. Yes, because the answer there is the combination of the whole synergizing. And yet, if you go around saying, what is your answer for this? And what is my answer? And what is yours? You will create so much possibility and buzzing and combining and synergizing that you can shift anything in your world. Yes?
Mary, I really appreciate you being here today
Mm,
to share your wisdom.
it
We'll
just
we bring back Jackie and say goodbye to her if that's okay.
beautiful. Beautiful. Absolutely. Thank you for having us. It has been our great pleasure. Be well. Yes. Mm. Hey,
You're back.
I'm back.
You probably get this question a lot, so I understand the process to go from allowing Mary to come through and how is it kind of like a handover in the reverse? It's like Mary goes, "Okay, you can come back now," or are you sort of in
Yeah.
control of that process too?
It's like there's an opening, and I will say actually there's, through all of the experience with them, sometimes, they're always like, "Oh, Jackie's energy needs to come back," and so they'll do that. But yeah, I just kinda slide back in or forward in. They always say, "You always go forward, not back." Um, yeah, I just come into my fully physical self. I've had people say, do you ever just think maybe you'd like to stay where you are and not come back? And I said, you know what, I really probably why this works for me is I love having a physical life, and it's not always easy, but I'm always curious, and there's always another moment and opportunity, so I always want to come back.
Mm.
Now I will say my husband doesn't let me drive right after I've channeled. It's
Because
not
you got
very
a
grounding.
foot in both worlds. Maybe it's not such a good idea.
Yeah.
Uh, all right, Jackie, this has been great. I mean, I could go on for hours, but I'm conscious of the time. I know it's getting late for you. Do you have, if people want to get in touch with you, find out more about the work that you do, programs, etc., what's the best way for them to do that?
So we have a website called themarygroup.com, and it's MARY. And we also have a Facebook community group that is called, let's see, it's a soft, warm, wise, humorous place to land on Facebook. And the Marys do put a note up every day, and sometimes conversation stirs from that. We'd like to stimulate more of that. Um, and so you can find out about anything through our website. We do offer, private sessions. We offer online 6-week groups. We have an ongoing grounded conversations group that meets once a month, and that's where the Marys just field any questions anybody who arrives there have. And they usually do start with a teaching, something that you can dive into and learn more about, so you know how to apply it personally to yourself in your life. Lots of ways. You can learn about it all on the website, though.
Hmm. It's a rather reminiscent. I don't know if whether Esther still does. She always had that the initial wisdom. Then there was like the hot seat, and
Yeah.
that's the questions. I
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Mhm.
okay, so do you have any last message that you'd like to leave people with before we wrap up today's conversation?
Mm, I don't know. I guess, one of the things Marys say that I try to, and I'm very messy about sometimes and brilliant at sometimes is, let every response be love. And that's whether it's a conversation with yourself or with someone else. Remember to take a breath and lean in with who you actually are and where you want to go. They talk often about against energy never takes us where we want to go. So lean in and see where you want to go and follow that.
Hmm, that's brilliant. Jackie, I
Mhm.
really appreciate you being my guest today.
Thank you. I truly appreciate being invited. So thank you, Rod. It was great. Great to meet you.